They smiled when they did it. That's what haunts you, not the act, but the moment before it. The way their lips curled gently, eyes soft, posture relaxed, as if they weren't rewriting your entire world in real time. No screams, no rage, just that calm, casual cruelty disguised as kindness. It wasn't an accident. It was art, executed with precision, designed to hit you where no blade ever could. And you stood there, pretending not to see it. Not because you were naive, but because some part of you wanted to believe their smile meant what it used to, before you learned what it actually meant. There's a silence that follows betrayal, not the kind around you, but the one inside you. It moves in like fog. It mutes the heartbeat, slows the breath, makes every word you could have said feel pointless. Your mind, usually sharp, suddenly spirals in reverse, scanning memories, trying to spot the moment they decided to break you. Was it the second laugh at your expense? The look they shared when they thought you weren't watching? The way they never defended you when it counted? The signs were all there, but their smile, that damned smile, was louder than all the warnings. You wanted to speak, to call it out, to strip the mask off and force truth into the light. But you didn't. You watched. You memorized. You became the archivist of your own undoing. Every word they said became data. Every gesture became a page in a dossier you didn't know you were building. Because somewhere deep beneath the pain, a darker instinct whispered, "Wait. Don't react. Don't bleed for them. Bleeding would give them proof they got to you. No. Let them think you're slow, stunned, broken. Let them think they won." What they didn't see was the shift behind your eyes. The ancient machinery waking up. The part of you forged not in love, but in exile. Older than logic, deeper than rage. You saw it all, but said nothing. You smiled back, not because you meant it, but because you understood now. The battlefield was not the moment. The battlefield was after, and war is won by those who watch. You never forgot that moment. The taste of the air, the exact temperature of the room, how long the pause lasted between their sentence and your silent nod. It became a scar burned into your perception, a compass you carry every time someone smiles just a little too easily. You no longer see faces, you see masks, and behind each one, you listen for the silence before the storm, because that's where the truth lives. Not in what they say, not in what they do, but in what they allow themselves to smile at, thinking you'd never see the blade behind it. But you did, and now they don't even know. You're already inside. They thought you were gone, not physically. No, your body moved through rooms, still breathed, still blinked, but your presence, it evaporated. You became background, forgettable. They stopped watching you, stopped calculating your movements, because they believed the wound they gave you had drained all your fire. That was their first mistake. They mistook your silence for surrender. But in truth, you were never more alive than in that absence. You weren't destroyed. You were disentangling. In the echo of that betrayal, you began listening to things no one else could hear. The tremor in their voices when they lied. The way their eyes darted, left, right, avoiding truth. You learned to read micro-expressions like scripture. In a world ruled by surface-level noise, you mastered the frequency beneath. You became fluent in subtext, trauma, motive. While they laughed, you took mental notes. While they planned your end, you were writing your resurrection. You saw them, not as monsters, but as blueprints, fragile systems pretending to be whole. There was no need for confrontation. You had something more potent than revenge. Presence, without pressure. Your stillness made them nervous. They didn't know why your silence felt heavy, why the air bent slightly when you entered a room. You were the ghost at their table, untouchable, unprovoked, unfinished, and that unspoken energy began to haunt them. You started collecting data like an archivist of the soul. You remembered every false smile, every disloyal whisper. You memorized their tells. When they blink too fast, when their tone shifts half a key. You began to move differently, slower, sharper, more deliberate. You didn't ask questions anymore. You let silence stretch until it became unbearable, because silence used correctly is not absence, it's domination. Behind your eyes, a war room formed. You sketched psychological profiles, decoded patterns, mapped how they manipulated others, then reverse engineered it. You didn't just want to survive them, you wanted to outgrow them, to master the terrain they crawled through like parasites. They used betrayal as a tool. You made it into a forge. Every night you sat with your thoughts like ancient texts. You traced the lines of your pain, not to wallow, but to weaponize. You stopped needing comfort. You needed clarity. You began asking dangerous questions. Who taught them to be this way? What do they fear when they're alone? What part of themselves are they trying to bury under you? In doing so, you began to ascend. Not spiritually, but tactically. Emotion became data. Grief became leverage. They still don't see you coming. They can't. You're no longer part of their visible world. You exist just outside their comprehension, like a shadow that shifts when no one moves. You're not here to scream. You're not here to fight. You are recording, waiting, setting the stage for the day their own reflection starts whispering your name. They thought you'd crumble, that you'd drown in the aftermath of what they did. But you didn't break. You calculated. While they laughed, while they slept, while they forgot, you remembered. Not in pain, in structure. You began mapping their minds like enemy territory. Every moment, every glance, every twisted word they used as a weapon, converted into blueprints, psychological architecture. What made them smile that day was not confidence. It was fear, masked in arrogance, disguised as triumph. You saw it, not then, but now, clearer than glass. Their betrayal wasn't spontaneous, it was engineered. And now, so are you. You started small, observing habits, replaying conversations, noticing linguistic patterns, which words they used when lying, which body shifts accompanied shame. You cataloged it all like forbidden scripture, not out of obsession, but necessity. A quiet war doesn't require swords, it requires intel. And you were building a fortress out of secrets. You stopped asking why they did it. You started asking what they were protecting. That's when the door opened. That's when the descent began. Because once you step into someone's subconscious, once you truly understand what they fear, what they crave, what broke them long before they reached you, you own them. You learn to recognize the child hiding in the adult, the insecurity behind the cruelty, the need behind the betrayal. Their betrayal was never about you. It was about their failure to control their own narrative. You were too sovereign, too still, and stillness terrifies the chaotic. You reflected their weakness back at them like an ancient mirror, and they hated you for it. So they tried to destroy you, not with fire, but with smiles. But even smiles leave fingerprints, and you studied those fingerprints like ancient runes carved into stone. Now you move differently. You think like a strategist. You sit across from them in rooms they believe they dominate, knowing their next 10 moves before they speak. You nod, you smile, but inside, you're flipping pages in a dossier they've never seen. One with their traumas, their compulsions, their programmed self-sabotage. You know when they will fail, who they will turn on, how they will spiral. You've seen the pattern. They walk through life on a loop, and you've cracked the code. They think you've forgotten, but you've ascended. You aren't seeking justice anymore. You're constructing a chessboard inside their minds, one move at a time. The power isn't in destroying them. It's in knowing that you could. It's in becoming the architect of their unraveling without ever touching a single thread. They thought they broke you, left you cracked and hollowed like a porcelain figure knocked from its shelf. But what they didn't understand is this: some fractures don't destroy you. They reveal the map beneath your skin, the outline of something older, something colder. You don't heal the way they expected. You transform. You stand before the mirror now, not to see your face, but to confront the reflection behind your eyes. The ritual is not physical. No candles, no chants, just silence. Heavy, surgical. You watch yourself with the detachment of a surgeon studying a corpse. The version of you who trusted them, gone. The part that needed apologies, explanations, closure, dead weight. You exhume your own softness and bury it without ceremony. Every betrayal leaves a fingerprint on your psyche. You trace them like scars across glass. You don't cry, you extract. Each memory becomes data. Each lie becomes a code. You analyze yourself the way they never could, with ruthless clarity. And in doing so, you become immune. Not heartless, calculated. There's a difference. You don't sever your empathy. You weaponize it. There's a moment when your pupils adjust, not to light, but to truth. You see what you were too kind to see before. You weren't betrayed because you were weak. You were betrayed because they saw something in you they couldn't manipulate. So they smiled, and they tried to break it. But all they did was awaken it. You remember the feeling of sitting across from them, their words dipped in sugar, their laughter punctuated by knives. You remember nodding, pretending not to notice, pretending not to bleed. But now you see it clearly. The patterns, the cracks in their armor. You could mimic their smile perfectly, down to the blink. You could finish their sentences. You could dismantle their mind with a sentence and make it look like kindness. But you don't, because this ritual isn't about vengeance. It's about dominion over yourself, over the impulse to strike too soon. You learn the art of waiting. You wear masks like second skin. You develop a presence that unnerves them. Not loud, not aggressive, just aware. When they look at you now, they can't read you, and that terrifies them. You've become the very thing they fear most, someone who sees without speaking, who understands without revealing, who remembers without reacting. In the stillness of that mirror, you meet your real self for the first time. Not the version they created, not the one who needed to be accepted, but the one who watches from the edge of the storm, untouched, ancient, strategic, unshakable. You walk away from your own reflection, not because you're finished, but because you're ready. You return, but not as they remember you. No announcement, no vengeance, no grand performance. Just presence, like fog rolling through a city that forgot the ocean existed. You walk into rooms like a whisper from a dream they can't quite place, but it tightens something in their chest. They offer smiles, the same ones they wore when they buried you. But now you smile back, and it's colder, still, measured like a blade pressed against silk. They don't know what changed, only that something has. You no longer fill space with apologies or questions. You say little, yet everything you say lands with surgical precision. The way your eyes hold just a second longer. The way you tilt your head, like you already know the punchline to a joke they haven't realized they're in. They search your face for clues, but all they find is themselves, reflected back. Because now you know them intimately. You know their tells, their fractures, their sacred insecurities. You've studied their fear of irrelevance, their hunger for control, their need to be seen as good. You learned their internal scripts and rewrote your role. You went from pawn to architect, and now, without saying a word, you begin shifting their foundations. They talk too much around you now, nervous chatter, over-explaining. They laugh louder, trying to fill a silence that seems to stretch infinitely between your pauses. You listen, not to what they say, but to the places they avoid, the stutters, the edits, the way their throat tightens when your name is spoken in a room. Before, your silence was submission. Now it's a warning. Before, you watched from the sidelines. Now you're the ghost inside their strategy meetings, the static in their plans, the unease in their victories. You never speak of what they did. That would give them clarity. Instead, you let them sit in ambiguity, where the human mind decays the fastest. They wonder if you told someone, if you're plotting something, if this calm is the eye of a storm, or the final breath before a collapse. And that wonder eats at them more than any confrontation ever could. Because the worst punishment isn't retaliation, it's absence of closure, the open door that might still hide a monster behind it. You don't seek revenge, you don't need it. You've already taken what they value most, the illusion of safety. You wear your new self like armor forged in ancient flame, each step forward blessed by a shadow that now walks beside you, not behind. You've become untouchable, not because you fought back, but because you became unreadable. And in every room, in every glance, in every moment of hesitation that flashes across their face, when they see you, you see it, the seed you planted, growing, twisting, blooming. You're not just back, you're inside. They don't know when it started. Maybe it was the way you looked at them, too calm, too composed, like someone who'd already seen the ending and decided not to warn them. You didn't speak much. That's what scared them, because silence, in your hands, became a language they couldn't decipher. Each quiet stare, each moment you let them talk while offering nothing in return, pulled a thread loose from their certainty. Their confidence rotted slowly, from the inside out. They replay every interaction with you like corrupted film. Was that a threat? A warning? A confession hidden in politeness? You didn't give them anything, and that was everything. Because humans can confront words. They can argue with accusations, but they cannot fight the abyss. And you became the abyss, smiling, still, unknowable. Their laughter grew strained. Their eyes darted more often. The walls they built to separate themselves from guilt started sweating. Their alliances, once forged in whispers and grins, begin to crack beneath the pressure of what they think you might know. You didn't need to lift a hand. Their minds did it all for you. You became a mirror they couldn't look away from, a mirror that showed them their own rot. Each word you speak now is weighted, not because it's loud, but because it could mean anything or nothing. That's the genius of it. They fill in the blanks. They hear threats in silence, see judgment in your restraint. You never said you were coming for them, but the fact that you could is more devastating than if you did. They begin whispering to others, testing the waters. Have you talked to them lately? Do you think they know? Should we be worried? And the irony is, they still pretend to smile. They still pretend to be unbothered, but their eyes betray them. You see the flicker of recognition every time you walk by. You're no longer a memory. You're a variable, a storm with no schedule, a consequence with no name. In ancient times, the most feared gods didn't speak. They watched, and their silence was prophecy. That's what you've become. Not a villain, not a victim, a presence. Something they feel in their bones when the room is too quiet. You exist now as a question that gnaws at their sense of safety. What happens if you decide to act? They hope you won't. They pray you won't. But hope and prayer are weak armor against someone who already lives inside their mind. And you do. Every lie they told echoes back to them in your silence. Every betrayal plays again in the way you blink. They tried to bury you in manipulation, but you sprouted into something far more dangerous, something formless, strategic, eternal. You're not haunting them, they're haunting themselves. You're just the silence that lets them hear it. They thought they won, that smile. They wore it like a crown, parading their betrayal as if it were brilliance. For a while they believed you had vanished into the dust of defeat. But ghosts don't vanish. They observe, they remember. And now their empire, built on deception, illusion, and shallow alliances, begins to rot from within. It starts subtly. One forgets to lie convincingly. Another hesitates in a conversation they once controlled. Eyes shift nervously in rooms that once echoed with arrogance. You say nothing. You do nothing. But your presence, your silence, coils around them like a whisper they can't locate. They think it's bad luck. A string of unrelated misfortunes, but no storm arrives by accident when you've studied the wind. You planted doubt with surgical precision, not with force, but with truth they never expected you to weaponize. One cracks under pressure and confesses something to someone they shouldn't. Another lashes out at a friend who had nothing to do with any of it. The betrayal that united them begins to divide them. They're no longer allies. They're suspects. Suspicion, like poison, passes silently through their shared history, turning memory into threat. And the most exquisite part, you never raised your voice, never made a scene. You simply returned, calm, composed, and impossible to read. Their own minds become the battlefield. You left clues you never intended to act on, breadcrumbs that lead nowhere, timelines that don't add up, expressions that mean everything and nothing. And they follow them like addicts, desperate to find the trap they're convinced is closing. But there is no trap, only the unbearable weight of their own conscience catching up. You are not their enemy, you are their mirror. In their unraveling, they don't see justice. They see ghosts. They see you in meetings, in glances, in the silence after laughter fades. They see a version of you they cannot name. Neither victim nor villain, just presence, just consequence. The truth is, you didn't need to destroy them. You understood them. That was enough. What collapses here isn't just reputation, it's narrative. The story they told themselves, that they were smarter, untouchable, justified. It fractures, and when they reach for that old confidence, they find nothing but dust. Because power, real power, was never in noise. It was never in spectacle. It was in knowing when to vanish, and when to reappear as the echo of everything they denied. By the time they realize what you've become, it's too late. You've already exited the stage, but the silence you leave behind is deafening, a void that speaks louder than vengeance ever could. They don't know when you left, not really. They remember seeing your face, but not the moment your presence vanished and something else took its place. You became absence with weight, a ghost with gravity. Their laughter faded before they realized you were no longer among them, and by the time they looked back, all that remained was the echo of your silence. Once you stood there bleeding beneath their smiles. Now you walk through their memories like a god through fallen temples. You no longer speak. You don't need to. Their own minds replay the betrayal for you. Every room they enter holds the scent of doubt. Every mirror reflects not their face, but your reaction. That haunting stillness that said more than rage ever could. You left no scars on their skin, but they carry wounds in places they cannot touch. Because you became something they cannot name, there's no satisfaction, just stillness. The kind that comes when you understand power doesn't scream. It whispers. It waits. It walks away, not because it is done, but because it never needed to stay. You watched them destroy themselves with the weapons they forged for you, and you didn't lift a finger. That's the part that will haunt them forever. Not what you did, but what you didn't do. They expected revenge. They prepared for war. But what they got was worse. They got silence. Strategic, surgical, sacred. Now they live in your afterimage. Every decision they make, every alliance they form, every glance over their shoulder carries your shape. You were once their weakness, their miscalculation, their underestimation. But now you are the variable they cannot control. You are the dark space in the equation, the force that moves without name or sound. And the worst part, they did it to themselves. You don't smile, you don't celebrate, there's no need. Because what you've become is beyond vengeance. You are the observer now, like those ancient watchers in forgotten myths, the ones who don't interfere, but whose presence alone determines the fate of kings. You know their pattern. You've mapped the terrain of their fears, and even if you never appear again, they'll never unsee what you showed them. They taught you betrayal. You taught them consequence. And now, as you disappear into the quiet, into the folds of your own legend, you leave them with the one thing they cannot kill, the version of you that survived, not the victim, the architect.